theatrical presentation style than I'm used to in a lecture theatre at Goldsmiths. So feel a little bit exposed right now. But I'm Dr. Daniel Strutt from Goldsmiths, and this is my colleague.
I'm Alexander Whitley. I am the Artistic Director of Alexander Whitley Dance Company, and we're here today to talk about our shared research project that's been supported by XR Network Plus, and we will be talking about our joint research over the last few years, the development of Otmo, a software platform, and the Mocap streamer project that Dan has been spearheading from Goldsmiths University, and then we're going to round off our presentation with a performance of an experimental piece that's using the motion capture streamer. We have a performer here at the venue and also in our studio in London. They'll be dancing together, connected remotely using the Mocap streamer. So next slide, please, Luca. So I'll say a bit about myself first of all. So I'm a choreographer and artistic director of Alexander Whitley Dance Company. We are a creative studio that have been exploring the intersection of dance and digital technology for over the last 10 years or so. Some examples of some productions we've made and some of our partners that we've collaborated with and been supported by. We make work across stage, screen, immersive and interactive platforms, always with a question around the role or the relationship between live performance and some form of digital technology. And just recently we launched the first iteration of the Digital Body Festival. It was a new festival exploring that intersection of the moving body and digital technology, which invited in many other artists working at this area, around this area of creativity. And yeah, it's something we hope will continue on into the future. Next slide, please, Luca. But I just wanted to say a little bit at the beginning about why I, as a choreographer, am interested in working with digital technology. So this Venn diagram hopefully kind of spells it out relatively straightforwardly, but as a general trend, you can think about the development of technologies as moving from the capturing of sounds and images towards the progressive mapping of spaces and the movement of people within it. So we are told increasingly that we're in the era of spatial computing. Apple made a big splash about that with the Vision Pro. But technologies in general have been moving in this direction for a while. And as a choreographer, I've been really interested in what that means for dance and choreographic practices, because these technologies are directly relevant to the skills and techniques that have been honed and developed for a long time prior to the existence of these technologies. And often the companies making them aren't necessarily thinking about them in the most interesting or sophisticated ways. So I think there's an interesting kind of overlap of this world of thinking that comes from the world of dance and choreographic practices, and this kind of nascent space of motion responsive and spatial technologies, and bringing them together to explore what it means for dance, where it can take dance as a creative practice, and what it means also for the relationship between live performers and audiences. Yeah, there's a lot to explore there that I've been trying to tap into for the last 10 years or so, but there's a whole world out there to explore in more detail. Thanks, Luca. Next slide.
Yeah, so I'm a scholar, a lecturer, a researcher at Goldsmiths. That was my book basically my PhD from 2019 being published. So you can see there's an image of dance on there. That was the same creative technologist that we often work with, Neil Coughlin, because it captured a lot of the essence of what the book was about and what my thinking was about. I come from a film philosophy background, and I was thinking already about new digital platforms and the new kind of, with the phenomenology of experience within those platforms. And I turned to dance very early on because it's simply the most primal expression of movement in space and presence and embodiment. So I started to develop research projects around the dancer's phenomenology. If we lose the sense of gravity, we lose the sense of touch, we can simulate these things through other sensory modalities, and we can use interaction effects and visual effects to actually expand the kind of experiential internal environment of the dancer. So yeah, but I've also sort of focused on access, inclusivity, affordability, and thinking that this actually, has a very broad appeal to many, all kinds of different users. Not dance being the way into the realm of practice, but actually within there finding a space for a wide variety of different kinds of people. Next slide. Without getting too philosophical on you, I've always focused on, like I said, the phenomenology of the dancer, and it relates a lot to what Alex was just saying. So instead of being the passive spectator in these new media platforms, the passive cinematic spectator who might be cognitively simulating the movement of the dancer and moving yourself in your seat as you experience it, instead we have a new kind of identification going on there. Not identification with a character or with narrative, but through kind of alien forms, extensions of humans, and we can frame this through sort of post-humanism, etc., etc. So I've always been interested in the more experimental practices, and this is by way of framing also what we're going to look at later, the kind of more experimental practices that kind of distort and extend the body, and how does that feel for the dancer? And then also for the audience, because increasingly in these new platforms, the boundary between audience and performer start to break down. They're moving in and around each other and experiencing the medium of dance in radically new ways. Next slide. So a little bit about the research project that has brought me to work with Alex for many years now. We started doing this together in about sort of 2020 during the COVID pandemic. And the framework that we're presenting tonight is about a remote, connected dance practice, two dancers in different places, meeting each other in a virtual environment. And and then the metaverse came along in public discourse in about 2021 through Zuckerberg et al. And I kind of used that as a framing mechanism. Obviously, metaverse is a bit of a bad word these days, but I always saw it as a space for play and experimentation, and I was very interested in the aesthetic and experiential possibilities within these. So as you see there, 2020, we started with ideas that address COVID-19, open call for the AHRC, and Alex was dancing in his daughter's bedroom, I believe, with another dancer in the studio with us and another dancer in a third location as well, because we weren't really allowed to leave our houses at the time. And it was so evocative even at that time that we just knew there was some mileage in this. We then did an AHRC follow-on funding for Creative Economy for Sustainable Development, and we did a residency. We provided, it was a virtual residency, and we provided teams all over the world with kit and training and mentorship. So there was teams in India, Malta, Thailand, Brazil, LA, and the UK, all dancing together in virtual spaces. Obviously overcoming obstacles, overcoming limitations, a lot of discovery, janky assemblages of technology and stuff like that, but still some great ideas and some beautiful work produced. This one up in the top corner here is from Brazil, working with two southern Brazilian dancers who are very senior and in their 70s and 80s, with this sense that they might lose some of the nuance of that dance style, and they saw it as an archiving project. We did a project that was disability-centered with the Goldsmiths researcher Clarice Hilton leading that one as part of the residency program. And we took that to South by Southwest, and this focused on the kind of sensory representation of non-normative bodies through disabled dancers and neurodivergent dancers, and really following their desire to feel represented in a certain way. And we've done this at Goldsmiths, but this is quite by far the biggest stage I've ever done. So next slide, please.
So I'm going to say a bit about Otmo, which is a motion capture-based movement creation platform that I've been developing through my company over the last few years. And a lot of what we're building into the software platform is rooted in that kind of experimental work that was done in the early days of the pandemic. I'd been working with interactive technology and motion capture prior to that, but the pandemic was really a spur for us to explore that in a lot more depth, partly because we were forced to. A lot of the conventional activities that we were doing as a touring dance company weren't available to us. I happened to pack a Mocap suit with me as I escaped from London and started experimenting with that started forming a community of collaboration with people from posting the improvisations I was doing with this motion capture suit online and seeing how people were using that motion capture data and exploring how that movement could be represented in a broad range of ways. And around the same time, we as a company had been thinking about how we could take the kind of innovation that we were putting into our touring theatre productions and VR experiences and apply them to some form of education project, kind of sensing that there was an opportunity with this kind of technology to overcome some of the challenges and barriers that people experience when entering into movement and dance practices, with the need for space, studio space and dancers being the biggest barrier to access for anyone to begin to start to explore creativity around movement. So Otmo really emerged out of that, and the research interviews we did with a lot of teachers working in secondary schools around the UK. And in essence, what it is something akin to what has existed in other industries like film and music for a long time, which is a sequencing and editing platform. But in this case, it's using motion capture recordings rather than video or sound recordings. And I think this has become much more viable as a prospect because of the developments in motion capture technology over the last 5 or 10 years. It's now a technology that is affordable and available for individual practitioners to work with. And so we have been building out this platform, attempting to make a very simple and user-friendly system, again, in recognition of the fact that while the availability of motion capture technology has become increasingly accessible for individuals, doing anything with that motion capture recording once you have it is still very complicated. There's a whole kind of world of different software platforms and processes you need to go through to go from that motion capture file, the FBX file, into a rigged avatar performing in a scene in a 3D environment. So I guess we're taking that template of the GarageBand, the iMovie, thinking of this very basic entry-level platform so that people working in the performing arts and dance who tend not to have that kind of technical skill can gain access to this world of creativity that motion capture technology opens up. So I'm going to give a little demo video of the platform. slide, please, Luca. So yeah, I'll just explain a little bit about the different features and functions that we have been building into the software. So as you might have seen, one of the main tasks was to make the placement of characters in the environment as straightforward as possible, moving them around and positioning them in space, and then thinking about how bigger patterns and formations could be built off those sequences. So it's bringing a lot of the tools and techniques from that the choreographers work with in the studio, taking a movement motif and then iterating and amplifying that through bigger formations of dancers, applying spatial and temporal offsets to them. So building that kind of thinking into the platform is making it much quicker and easier for users of the platform to arrive at quite complex outcomes. And as a pre-visualization tool for people working with dance, it's very helpful to be able to see these things in advance or alongside the work they might be doing in the studio. And then building in a sequencing function into it has been a big part of the process, so that you can then take the motion capture recordings and link them together, creating kind of new and original sequences in the process of doing that, but really precisely arranging them in relation to a piece of music, for example, on a timeline. One of the areas of research we've been engaging in with Dan through some funding he had through a British Academy Fellowship was around a customizable avatar, so that you might have seen there's an avatar that you can adjust the proportions and shapes of the body. We've been working to try and overcome some of the exclusionary practices that come with the representation of bodies in digital spaces, and ensuring that users of the app can either see themselves and their particular characteristics represented in the platform, or those of the performers they're working with. And that's an ongoing research project. We're looking at, again, at how not just a range of different shapes of bodies, but non-normative body types and different forms of physical disability can be represented in the avatar design, but then also thinking about what that means for the motion capture library as well, the types of movement that are available for people to work with in the software. And we're in the process of trying to open the platform up from being what is at the moment relatively closed to an inbuilt library of assets to users being able to import any of their own custom assets, so characters, music, animations, and scenes. So it'll be hopefully a very kind of flexible and open platform for people to work with their own material and content. Thank you. Next slide. So we've been primarily focusing on this desktop version of the platform, which, as you see here, is focused primarily on this very accessible, user-friendly user interface. It's based around the use of pre-recorded motion capture, either with that inbuilt library or content that people can record and load into the app themselves. Enabling that sequencing and editing of it, and the pre-visualization and kind of building of complex structures is a key element of it. And then, as I said, the customizable avatar and the flexibility for people to import their own material is the main focus of that. But alongside the development of this desktop version of the platform, we've been experimenting with how the underlying technology can be used in different ways. So if you move on to the next slide, please, Luca. Move up. So we've got Otmo Live, which is effectively taking a lot of the same functions that generate these bigger patterns and formations, iterate on that on the motion capture feed, but in this case we're feeding motion capture into it live. So that's the basis of what we'll be using as the performance today. So we're looking at how this technology can be used as a live production tool, and thinking about then incorporating that into our own productions, but in the longer term thinking about how that could be made available as part of the software platform itself. And then we've also been exploring how this same technology can be used in a virtual or mixed reality setting. We had the opportunity to develop a prototype of a VR version that we presented at SIGGRAPH last year. And there's a lot that very naturally translates into that kind of fully immersive environment, working spatially in terms of the arrangement of material and being situated in the virtual studio with the performers, the dancers, around you is a much more natural perspective. It's closer to the actual experience of being in the studio with dancers. So there's an intention to develop that in the longer term, but we focus primarily on the desktop version, knowing that that's a much more widespread platform that people will have access to.
Yeah, but we're building kind of an ecology here, and ultimately, several years down the line, we're thinking how these will grow together, and each of these sort of channels went into it was part of the British Academy research, so being able to engage with other dancers remotely has an obvious accessibility benefit. The same with immersivity, being able to experience performance on new platforms from spaces without the need to travel, for instance. And the desktop software, so anyone can engage with motion capture and choreographic content without necessarily having to step into a dance studio, which would have lots of barriers to overcome for many people. So that was broadly within the British Academy funding structure of the Innovation Fellowship, in which I spent a year, and then the integration of the Mocap streamer with Otmo was funded by XR Networks last year and through to the beginning of this year. And we're on version 3 of the Mocap streamer now. We started in 2019 with the first version. In fact, it might actually be version 4, I'm not quite sure. But this one, we had lots of problems with institutional firewalls and things like that. And having to have ports open, and since the priority for us was always like click and play, no technical obstacles to engagement. We really wanted the simplest structure possible, so we came up with the idea of doing a WebRTC streamer. So if you don't know WebRTC, it's basically what text and chat room services mostly use. It's an incredibly common protocol. So firewalls don't seem to bother that much with it. So we essentially we built a very, very simple interface like a chat room, where you just join as a sender or receiver or both, and you can see the other people pop up as connected participants within the room. These are just drop-down menus. We don't worry about them. We always wanted to completely eliminate port numbers, IP addresses, any bump like that, because I'm not a technical person in the slightest. So if I can't do it, then dancers are not necessarily equipped to what's your IP address? They simply don't know. So get rid of all of that. Just join the chat room. Just point and click and connect. And then we wanted to build that in through the XR network plus funding into Otmo. So next slide. Like I said, I'm not a technical person. So yeah, maybe you want to say.
I mean, yeah, this is just a kind of simple visual description of the process of how the streamer works. So in the top left-hand corner, your right, sorry, say to left, your right, you'll see that's a screenshot from Axis Studio, which is the native software of the perception neuron suits that we have been working with. Their inertial motion tracking suits. They're relatively affordable.
They've been a project partner for many years and supported us in many ways, so we started with them. But
they're one example of, the XNs and Rococo are kind of equivalents in terms of the different solutions around inertial tracking. But we're sending data out of Axis Studio to the motion capture streamer app. That then connects to a host, so you can be either sending or receiving or doing both. So it goes into the app, is sent out to someone else at the receiving end. That is then received and fed into a Unity project. So in your bottom right-hand corner, you see the same avatars going into a Unity project, and then there's a whole world of possibilities that opens up once that data is coming in and is integrated into this game engine space. So in the instance of what we're doing in the performance today, we have the performance in different locations wearing perception neural motion capture suits, using the Mocap streamer to send the data into a Unity project that's running here, and that's then generating visuals that are being broadcast onto the screen here, but also back to our studio. So both performers see the same virtual environment, see how they're meeting together in that virtual environment, but are obviously performing apart from each other.
And then the next slide is a similar diagram, but really just showing you how the proprietary software of the motion capture system, and we're trying to diversify beyond perception neuron. We started there, but we're very actively trying to get some Mocap system interoperability going. That's sending out a UDP signal via stream, and then the data is shared between multiple users. We've not really truly tested the limits of it through WebRTC instantaneously, and then we can select outputs to Unity product. We're confined to Unity at the moment, but we have done this kind of work with Unreal before and Touch Designer. There's no reason, but we can also send out via OSC, I believe, right? So which allows a broader section. You can do sound with OSC messages, so movement can triggering sound. It can also go into different graphic softwares as an output, though Otmo is a Unity build.
So as part of this ongoing research collaboration, we've been exploring how what we're developing in Otmo, the functions, but also this the platform in the form of the desktop app and the live version can be integrated with the motion capture streaming system. So yeah, in the case of the performance we're doing today, again as an example, a lot of the technical foundation is coming from what we've been developing with Otmo, but then using the Mocap streamer enables another way of using this kind of creative platform to explore more in terms of the possibilities for remote connected performances, different kinds of relationships again between venues, between performers and audiences. So it's a really kind of experimental space we're exploring, but looking at how we can connect these different forms of technology and just really questioning, exploring what opens up when we try and link them together in various different ways.
Yeah, I've always framed this.
I'm Luca Biada, creative technologist. I'm working with Alexander Whitley, and I'm the original developer of Otmo. And today I had the pleasure to play with the dancers and perform on my side.
Luca was able to work his magic to generate lots of different patterns and variations and different kind of visual effects from those motion capture feeds.
The main point of Otmo is probably that it allows a very quick and easy manipulation of motion capture data. In this case, Otmo Live allows to manipulate motion capture data coming in real time, and it was a pleasure to work with Mocap Streamer and test out the capabilities of Otmo in a multi-country scenario.
So today we were testing a Mocap Streamer app and this new exciting software integration.
And today I was dancing live with another dancer who was in another country using this amazing software and experiencing kind of in real time how their movement can affect mine even when we're not in the same room, which is always interesting and kind of challenges your own sense of your own body and how that's influencing them over distance, and then that being manipulated and you becoming a kind of form that's integrated into a bigger, exciting picture. It can be ever changing.
Very interesting to dance with someone, imagining he or her is here and then they're not, but I see that we are interacting, so that absence, dancing with an absence, yet seeing a presence is very nice.
There's been a strong focus on inclusivity and accessibility. So we frame a lot of the developments around this project about people being able to join in and dance on their own terms from whatever space they're in. We really effectively and seamlessly brought dancers from Brussels and from London into the same virtual space for a very tangible interaction today. So I'm very, very happy.
So yeah, that was a test done for at the end of the last XR Networks funded project in March. The images you saw there have come a long way since then, I have to say, with further funding from XR Networks, more akin to these images that you see here. Yes, so, I mean, I wanted to play that video because, as I said, I'm very, very interested in the dancer's experience. You know, how do they, in their own words, and, you know, how can they explain their internal environment when they're dancing in this way? You might expect that a dancer would find it very jarring to be dancing with someone who's not in the same room with them, that there would be a fundamental kind of disconnect or disembodiment or disengagement. But that's not been the reported experience generally. Yes, there are obstacles to overcome, there are limitations, there's a kind of cognitive leap that has to be overcome to engage with it. But once they're in that mental space, that imaginary space, they can really start engaging with the image of the other dancer in kind of interesting and new ways. And that's really what I'm trying to track through my research. So we see an emergent kind of aesthetics or poetics coming through this that, you know, in some ways, you know, if there is a loss of the body to a certain extent, we don't deny that, then it's substituted for in other ways, yielding, you know, other kinds of experiences that are not disconnected for the dancer. So some of the things we've explored through the research is, you know, how do the dancers find each other in the space? What kinds of choreography can you bring to that to allow them to find each other in the space and explore, and how can that be choreographed? Well, Alex can speak to that in a second. Yeah, and how do we guide the attention of an audience or an audience member? Where are they in the room? Are they moving around? Are they looking at the dancer? Are they looking at the screen? Are they looking at this other screen, remote? And how is that kind of layered space being experienced for both dancers and audiences, these different levels of awareness? And obviously, how do you know, the interaction effects that are rendered through real-time generative graphics engines like Unreal, like Unity, how can they be used to extend the feeling or interiority of the dancer, to encourage them to move in interesting and new ways? So maybe you speak a little bit.
Yeah.
And also, sorry, about, you know, if we always thought to ourselves, if we are going to experience any delay or latency, how do we work with that? As it turns out, it's never really happened. You know, so yeah, you can speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think briefly, it's really interesting to think about the possibilities of what these new or emergent technologies introduce, but meaningfully integrating them into creative practices is often difficult and takes a lot of time. And I think that's what, you know, has been great about this extended research collaboration. It really allows continued iteration and exploration around not only building the kind of underlying systems to enable these possibilities, but then really thinking about how we can experiment with different kinds of performance settings and finding ways, different creative tools to build on top of the underlying technology to hopefully create meaningful experiences and to come to terms with what the differences are when placing a live performer in relation to a virtual representation of itself and also a live video feed of a performer in another space. There are many layers to reconcile, and just thinking about the audience experience and how these technologies can be used not just to demonstrate the potential of what they can do, but to create hopefully novel and interesting experiences. It's a really long-term, ongoing research project.
And there are other people working in this field as well. For instance, there was an IBC accelerator working the same thing, but they tend to center the technology. They tend to center the innovative aspects of it, whereas we've always sort of centered, and we think this is the benefit of our working relationship, is we center the audience experience, the dancer experience, and the aesthetic approach that we take. And I think that gives the project a kind of distinctive feel, instead of building a technical framework and then thrusting an artist into it and then saying, oh, what can you do? You know, we go the other way around. So there's just a couple more slides. And
yeah, we should
wrap up.
So yeah, I'll just quickly touch upon our current development. So as we mentioned, we've been funded by XR Network Plus, and also a DCMS Create Growth grant, which has been helping us continue to develop Otmo as a platform, but also look at this continued integration of features of the Mocap Streamer project, both into the desktop app, so looking at feeding motion capture into it live to enable the direct recording into the app itself, as well as then thinking about opening it up into a live production tool. But then we've also continued to develop the Mocap streamer system to make it both easier to work with, but also overcome some of the initial challenges that there were, for example, being locked to the avatar that comes out of Access Studio, for example. As you saw in that previous video, the appearance of the characters in the virtual environment was a kind of robotic like avatar, which is just what gets sent out of Access Studio. So we've overcome that now, so that it can, that motion capture feed can be rigged onto any kind of avatar design, which opens up a lot of creative possibilities.
Yeah, aiming for mocap system interoperability,
Yeah.
which I already mentioned. We've already done tests with the Vicon system in Perth, Australia. Again, practically no delay, which was very surprising. And then we want to integrate also other, broaden that range. So anyone can simply, again, click and connect. There's no jiggery-pokery with IP numbers. Yeah, and the long-term vision for me is about remote co-creation, remote collaboration. The idea that in a very responsive real-time mode you could put together choreography with someone on the other side of the world and just be like, oh, how about I do this? And then drop it in, multiply it, manipulate it, share, So the bringing together of the Mocap streamer and Otmo is not just about live performance, it's also about a wider variety of different kind of applications of live capture, remote collaboration, remote co-creation.
Yeah. And then ultimately looking at how these systems extend into a fully spatial experience, both from the kind of user perspective, as I was referring to before, the VR version of this, thinking about how the creativity itself can happen in more of a spatial way rather than at a laptop screen. At the moment, there's still a bit of a disjointed experience of working creatively at a laptop and then thinking about how you can get up and move in a space. That's always been a bit of an uncomfortable experience for me as a choreographer, as a practitioner. They're very different mindsets and modes of thought and action, and so trying to draw these things closer together, again taking advantage of the affordances of spatial technologies, but then thinking again about what that means from a performative perspective as well, so bringing performers and audience members together in a shared 3D virtual environment is the ultimate goal of this.
So final slide is on future vision, and we're definitely looking towards mixed reality devices and overlaying of virtual and just playing off what Alex was just saying. But as I said, what makes this project special for me is that this isn't applied. It's within the dancer's experience. It's within a discourse of this expression, aesthetics. Coming out of the Digital Body Festival from last weekend, that we did a lot of the organising together in curation. It's clear that there is audiences for these new kind of types of performance and touring ecologies. We had a speech from Gilles Jobin in CGHero broadcast from a studio in Geneva, and pointing out, and we had a little panel discussion with him after that, and he said, yeah, we broadcast to 28, 30 different festivals around the world with 0 flight hours, mitigating a carbon footprint. Of course, none of this practice is carbon neutral, and I hasten to point that out. I wrote an article about it. But touring does have a massive ecological impact, and this is worth exploring as a new platform for audience experience and a new platform with its own integrity aesthetically.
Sorry, can you just go back, Luca?
Just one. We're finishing
Thank you.
now.
So those final points are just around thinking about how we're developing this as a platform, which is obviously rooted in dance and the performing arts sector, but we're thinking about also how what we're doing extends out and has relevance to people working in other creative sectors around games, animation, immersive entertainment, how these, the embedding of choreographic knowledge and thinking into these tools is potentially useful and helpful for other people that are looking to generate sophisticated movement outcomes in a range of different kind of entertainment contexts. So that's, again, part of our longer term vision for this. And you can now go to the final slide. Thank you. Yeah, so some QR codes you can scan will take you to the website for Otmo. So Otmo is available to download. There's a free version, a free beta version that we launched a few months ago, available to download. We're developing it further. There's a paid subscription model that we're kind of building around it. And yeah, then there's links to other things. But we will swiftly move on to our performance. So on the side of the stage, we have Luca Biada, who you saw speak in a video a moment ago. And we have Gabriel,
who also spoke
yes,
on the video.
In London, we have Eleni, another dancer that works with the company, and Clémence de Bègue, who is a developer that's been working very closely with Luca on the development of Otmo. I'm going to just quickly switch over the video, so we'll be seeing a Zoom feed here on this screen into our studio in London, and hopefully we can get Gabriel onto the stage to start getting ready. Welcome, Gabriel.
I will step off.
So we have to calibrate the motion capture suits at the beginning of the performance, just to ensure that the avatar or the motion capture feed is as clean as possible. You have a minute to wait. Yeah, but for those of you that are familiar with inertial motion tracking, you'll know that it's great in that we can pack up a motion capture suit and bring it to a venue like this. They're very portable and accessible, but they do suffer from certain issues in terms of interference from other electromagnetic sources and drift. So the calibration you might see during the performance starts to drift out and look a bit janky. That just is kind of part and parcel of working with these suits. But let me just quickly switch over to the other video. I'm going to move that. Okay. T-pose, please. A-pose. Oh, we need to start again. We're going to calibrate again. T-pose, please. A-pose. And walk. Great, okay. Thank you. I think we're ready to go. So we can change the lights. for Gabriel Eleni, who was there a minute ago, and Luca and Clem. Thank you very much today.
Yeah. We hope we convinced you that it's a valid form of performance. Come to us with any questions afterwards. We realise there's not any time for Q&A, but we'll be around. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to our funders.